the wild world of the diagnostic lab space, nothing is off limits. With science, compliance, sales, and marketing. Welcome to Lab Results with your host, Blake Bork. Welcome to the Lab Results Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Bork, and today we have a very special guest, an old ball player, a broadcasting host, a YouTube superstar, a fantasy football guru, and a good friend, Mr. Emory Hunt. Emory, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Blake, man. It's always great to catch up and talk shop and just be on this pod with you.
So I wish we would have been recording the first 15 minutes of our conversation that wasn't on tape, because it was actually some pretty enlightening stuff. And you and I hadn't had an opportunity to be able to talk for a while, but tell the fans, the followers of Lab Results, exactly what do you do in the world?
I do a little bit of everything, but I like to simply tell folks I'm a football analyst. Own and operate Football Gameplan. I'm a college football color commentator, so you'll see me on ESPN 3, ESPN Plus. Do some stuff with Fox Sports. You'll see me on CBS Sports HQ. I'm a football analyst there. Again, just do a little bit of everything. And so football analyst kind of sums it all up. Football game plan, color commentator with many different colleges, and also a football analyst at CBS Sports HQ.
So what inspired me to send out the invitation is, one, we share a birthday. So happy birthday. I'm 1 year your elder. I'm 1 year your elder. So you just hit the big 40, huh?
Yeah, just hit 40, man. Bodies don't feel like they used to, but it's still good to be here.
Yeah, you still look young though, man. But the reason why I reached out was because the audience of Lab Results are going to be medical laboratory sales reps, lab executives, and people that have a brand. Whether they realize it or not, they have a personal brand or they have a business brand, and then they have their personality and the personification of how they operate inside, by side, and on top of that brand. And I wanted to hear your story, because I know we kind of came from the same place. We were in the same running backs room for a while. And inside of that, you have an amazing story of how you got to where you're at. And it has a lot to do with social media, has a lot to do with consistent content, it has a lot to do with overcoming adversity. So I wanted to open up the space for you to be able to share how you did what you did, so we can look at it and study it and say, wow, if I am a laboratory sales rep, or if I am a medical device sales rep, or if I'm a lab owner, how can I inculcate some of these lessons into my daily discipline and my daily practice? Sound good to you?
Oh, it sounds great, man.
Awesome, brother. So I'm going to start off with the beginning of the story, man. So you came to the Raging Cajuns from the big city of New Orleans, huh?
Yep.
So what high school did you go to? Yeah, what high school did you go to in NOLA?
Eleanor McMahon High School in New Orleans. If it sounds familiar, that's where Lil Wayne went to high school as well, briefly, before he started doing that little rap thing that he became famous for.
That's awesome. Did you know him back in the day?
We ran across the halls a couple times. He came back, I want to say, my senior year in high school, watched a couple practices. We know it's like one of those situations where we know each other when we see each other because we recognize his face, but we wasn't like cool or anything like that. But it was interesting because that building, you had guys that may be familiar with rap, know the name Currency. We know him as Shantae. He went to McMahon. Me and Shantae, real tight. It was just a good artistic school that had a lot of personalities and a lot of people that came out that program.
That's awesome. Awesome. So after that, you come on and we both walk on to the Raging Cajuns, and God bless our hearts for making that decision. I was telling him I played for one of the worst football teams in America for 5 years. For 5 years. We weren't the worst the last year we were there. We had a pretty good group of coaches, and we started what they're doing right now, I guess, right?
Right. And the good part is, that it was probably the best place for me, because it was just the right place. And I think back on it, you meet great people around the program. Everyone that was there had a vested interest in that program, and it felt like a home. You go to some of these other schools and you kind of get lost in the atmosphere of the program. But University of Louisiana, or at the time Southwestern Louisiana before they switched over, it really felt like it felt like big high school, not in a negative sense, but in a sense where everyone had a vested interest in the program. It was his own little country, and it felt perfect for me. And you meet great people, and the teammates I had, like yourself and other guys in that running back room, and guys just on the team. It felt like a brotherhood, literally and figuratively. It was just an amazing spot, and I'm glad I chose University of Louisiana.
I look at it too from a coaching standpoint, and how important it is that you have good leaders on your team. And this isn't a shot against any of the hard work that anybody put into it, but we had Charles Tillman as a cornerback, Ike Taylor as a cornerback. Both of those guys may go to the Hall of Fame. Charles is definitely going to the Hall of Fame. Ike is almost a top 100 player for a decade and a half almost. He was there forever with the Steelers, got a couple of Super Bowls. You had Kyrie Saber, who played in the league for the Bengals and for the Vikings for a little bit, played in Canadian. And I want to say you had, like, who else was back there that was
Brad Franklin was an NFL player.
Brad Franklin, NFL player. So you had 4 NFL players, like DBU for a little bit, and we had one of the worst pass defenses in the Sun Belt. Right?
It never made sense, man. It never made sense.
No, and great individual efforts. And so when that was one of the biggest lessons that I took away from college, was how important coaching, leadership, strategy, and a game plan is. Because if you're missing, I'm running a business, and if I am missing one component, like a defensive line to put pressure on the quarterback, or if I'm missing one component, like linebackers to keep the running backs from getting outside, like one component could be marketing. It could be customer service. It could be being able to close. I could have somebody that's putting me in a compliance risk. But if everybody's not on the same page, it doesn't matter if you have Hall of Fame players as an individual, you're still going to be the worst defensive team in the Sun Belt.
And when you think about the offense, we couldn't really score points. You had Elvis Joseph, NFL player. Brian Jones was a tight end that found his way to the NFL with Jacksonville. And so you look at Mark Lemire, had a cup of coffee in the NFL. So you had some of these guys, you look around on paper, you look back at him like, man, we had at least
Fred Stamps.
Fred Stamps.
Fred Stamps plays in Canadian for a decade. Yeah.
He's a CFL. He's a Edmonton. Well, now that the Edmonton Elks, he's a legend up there. He's a CFL Hall of Famer. So is Kyrus. And is Kyrus going to be in the CFL Hall of Fame? So you had Donovan Morgan. You had a lot of these guys that were just dominant players at their level where they went on to play professional, but individual talent is different from team talent. And that's how you see a team like us with all this talent not have the team success, but then you see a team that probably wasn't as individually talented. Let's say like a Boise State, when they went ahead and knocked off Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, or App State beating Michigan. That shows you what you're talking about, how valuable the team is over the individual.
Yeah, the other really story that I tell a lot whenever I try to make a connection with good athlete, or good, I call them sales athletes. So for me, sales reps are athletes. They're professionals that get paid for a vocation. You're an athlete. And there's a lot of physicality that comes to sales too. Ike Taylor. Ike is a running back in a room with one of the fastest guys to run the combine the year he comes out. He's a running back for 3 years, asked to be moved every single year. If I'm not mistaken, he's basically trying to get on defense. Mm-hmm. We have a coaching change. He plays 1 year at cornerback and is taken in the 3rd round?
Yeah, third round, gets drafted.
Right? He's drafted and ends up with the Steelers and gets rings. If he doesn't have a coaching change, if somebody doesn't see in him what others didn't, he has a completely different life.
Imagine that. And that's how you may have the talent that but sometimes you need that person to see it in you, and also that other person to vouch for you. Mm-hmm. And that goes with business or whatever. You could be sitting here, and I could be sitting there as the best football analyst in the world in my apartment, at my home, and no one knows it until someone says, hey, I heard you are really good. Let's get them on air. Let's do this.
Well, that's a perfect segue back to your story. So how'd you get discovered? Like, what was the work before that you were doing when no one was watching that actually got you discovered and got you called up?
It's interesting when you think about it, and it kind of started back when. So you talk about how we were in the same running back room, and you remember my career was cut short due to injury. And
Mhm.
what was weird about that, and it's so unique, when you're so in it, you probably don't learn as much as you should. So stepping out of that room, being injured, and seeing it from a 10,000-foot level, it's probably the biggest growth from a learning perspective of the game than anything. So I learned more by not playing as opposed to when I was playing. So I was so focused on one position, doing my job and trying to be better there and not understanding how things work together. And so it always stuck with me. Like sometimes you got to take a step back and learn about the whole process as opposed to one task. So remember that key point. So
Mhm.
fast forward to now, it's 2003. I graduated in the spring. I coached at my old high school in McMain. And again, taking what I learned from the running back room to coaching, thought I knew everything, stepped back a little bit and was like, wow, I really have to teach and not just rely on players to do what you thought you did, because they may not know it. They may not be at the same level as you. So you got to really get them to understand. And then I jumped into corporate America in 2004. I was a recruiter, and so I recruited for an automotive technical school, and I knew nothing about cars, and so but I knew about education. I knew how important education was. So instead of me trying to dive in and become an expert on cars and automotives and diesel and all kind of stuff like that, let me focus on the big picture,
Mm.
getting this kid to go to school, doing something that he wants to do, and becoming successful in life. And with that approach, I became the top sales rep. And it's funny how competitive you can be, and that's something that carries all the way through.
Mhm.
I remember my first 2 months at work. The guy that hired me, who was a big sports guy, so he knew this was probably going to work. So I was just sitting in my office, just kind of like thumbing through the internet, right? He came in with this report. It was all the sales reps in the country. It was like 238 sales reps, and I was dead last. And he sent me. He was like, "Look," he said, look where you are." I was like, "Oh, that's crazy." And I said, "Well, next year, I'm gonna be number one," not knowing how I was gonna get there, not
Mm.
knowing how it was gonna happen. But I told myself, and I told him, I was like, "I'll be number one next year. Don't worry about that." And knowing what I know now is all about seeing it and putting yourself in position to be successful. So, in order to be number one, you have to figure out what it takes to be number one in this particular field that you're in. So,
Mhm.
okay, I need this many leads, I need this many conversions, I need this many guys to sign up to go to school, I need this many graduates. Cool. So I set the parameters and work backwards like a funnel.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, I'm seeing it happen. And as I'm working toward that, I'm winning regional awards and more regional awards. And next thing you know, I'm number one 3 months later, and carry that number one all the way out to the rest of the year to where I was number one in the company and won awards and was doing all kind of great things there. And then Katrina hit and moved me up to New York City, and it was crazy because I'm up here now in an area where I know nothing about, because it was all Louisiana for me. And that was the other part too. You kind of use what you have to get what you need. And so I knew I had New Orleans on lock. I knew I had intros to all the schools and counselors and principals. So it was easy for me to build that book of business. And now I go to New York, and my territory is the 5 boroughs, New Jersey, parts of Delaware, and parts of Southern Connecticut. No idea how to get around, no book of business, nothing. And so now it's really, okay, what can I do, simply? And it was just go, step by step. Uh, Got to go knock on doors, got to go introduce myself, got to build the book of business, so to speak, and find my way in. And was able to do that, work that, and got great results like I did in New Orleans and Louisiana, as far as the leagues becoming number one, still maintaining that reputation, despite not knowing the area. And but as I'm successful, I'm thinking, I kind of want to still be back in football. This is good. I enjoy what I was doing. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed touching these kids and helping them reach their goal. But football was still in me, and I didn't know how to get from point A to point B. But I was like, well, at least I could take a midway step. Let me try a website. So in '07, I started a website. it was Football Gameplan. And while I was still working, and I'm traveling salesman, so you could book your schedule and budget your time the way you need it to work for what you want to do on the side. So if I'm up early, I'll work on Football Gameplan, let's say from like 6 to about 7 in the morning, get on the road, do my work. And then with the thing about this particular recruiting job I had, it was like football recruiting. You spend all day in schools, and then in the evening time, for kids that wanted to go to the school, you had to go to their houses, meet with the parents, and have in-home visits. So if I'm done at 9 o'clock at night, well, I get back home about 10. The next thing you know, 11 to midnight, I'm working on Football Gameplan. So I'm kind of burning both ends, but it was something that I wanted to do. And after about 5 years of doing that, it was time for me to really just jump out and take the leap. And good thing in 2009, I started doing video, so it helped me budget my time better, so I can spend that hour I was working beforehand, and really getting stuff out and not have to worry about the hour on the back end and get more rest. So condensing my time helped me sharpen my skills, so ultimately be on TV, because that's what I wanted to do, was just creating videos. And you talk about the 10,000 hours, it was just the amount of videos I was able to produce in a week. We're talking about 34-minute videos in a week. And this was when YouTube first started, but the constant amount of content, not realizing that it was sharpening my blade, so to speak, and giving me those reps that you need to be on camera. That growth from 2009 to 2010 to 2011, so on and so forth, was tremendous. So where 2014 hit, I was ready for TV, and I was blessed with that opportunity.
And it's 10,000. It was Malcolm Gladwell that said that 10,000 hours of intense mastery, not 10,000 hours of like bullshit. 10,000 hours of like making it up. It's, and that's one of the reasons why I love recruiting, hiring, training, and co-leading with athletes. Like, one of my favorite things to do is to develop somebody who is an athlete. My absolute favorite sport to coach in business, cheerleaders. Hands down, 100%. Cheerleaders and dancers, because they know what it is to work hard. They know what it is also to trust. They also know what it is to call out bullshit. And I personally have found less drama with cheerleaders in medical sales, especially the ones that have been competitive in college. After that, softball players, then volleyball players, and then I'll take football players. I've never really done well with baseball players.
You know what's interesting? Funny you bring it up, because when I was coaching high school football in the spring, I coached softball. And I will tell you this, I tell everybody this, I would rather coach women than anything, because women actually listen to every minute detail you say. If you say, run this route and cut it off at 45-degree angle, she's going to run the route and cut it off at 45-degree angle. You tell us that, well, I'm good. I could probably round it off. I'm going to do it my way. No.
I didn't even hear you tell me 45 degrees. All I heard what you say was run. I don't know what route. I don't know what play. Like, it's a lot.
I don't even like geometry.
No, a lot of it has to do with men are still wrapped up in their ego, especially whenever they're young. They're still in protect and pretend and posture mode, right? I'm trying to protect my position, so I'm going to pretend like I know what's going on. I'm going to shake my head, make an intense face to coach, because this is what coach is like, right? And I'm a posture, and hopefully, I remember.
But I remember one time we were doing weight training, and and I told the young lady how to do hang clean, and first time she did it, and she was like, "This, did I do it right, coach?" And I'm sitting in my head, I'm like, "Damn, like she did it perfect. Like, there's nothing for me to coach." Like, like I was so ready. Like, no, you gotta do this. I was like, damn, like, it was perfect. Like,
yeah, it's funny. Whenever my sister and husband went through some, and her husband at the time, they went through some hard times, and her daughter Abby Grace came and lived with us, and she finished high school with me, and then with my aunt and my uncle. I loved it, but I was her cheerleading coach, and it was the first time I'd ever done it before. It was the first time I ever coached high school. Like I had a 2-year-old in the house, and all of a sudden I had a 16-year-old, and she was a junior going to a brand new high school. And this was in Mandeville, Louisiana. And then I learned so much about people and about coaching and about this exchange of like love and energy. But I learned I'd never coached women before. I didn't really hire women before that. I felt uncomfortable hiring women or coaching women before that experience. I almost always hired men, and it was because I didn't ever want to be, felt like I was crossing the line, or they won't be able to handle my intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. They can handle every bit of it. And I had so much more respect. And it was like a conversion of my own mindset. And now independently, it doesn't matter. I hire good performers, and I'm finding more and more now that college athletes perform in sales better than other folks. Does not matter. And it has a lot to do with what they do when no one's watching. It's this, and they're coachable, and they take criticism, and they ask questions like, how can I get better? What can I do better? And they're doing it because they know their performance matters. And when I tell them, look, we're going to measure your results, they automatically know, okay, cool. That's because what we measure, we can improve. And when I tell them 10,000 hours and I make a sports reference, they don't look at me like I'm, cross-eyed. So love the 10,000 hours, man. That's a great book too. All right. So you actually are high performing sales rep. So my hypothesis is still holding true. But you get a call. Who calls you first? Who says, hey man, I saw you. I recognize what you're doing. What was that like?
It was in 2014, and you reached that point where, I'm making all these moves as far as, YouTube is concerned, but you still feel like you're not breaking in. And you start to have that seed of self-doubt. Like, am I good enough? Do I need to do something different? Am I doing the right things? Do I really need to just go back into corporate America and hit reset and try to do it again? And I get a phone call from this guy down in DC. And he was like, hey man, I know you used to do those women tackle football preview videos. Would you mind doing one for this playoff game we have? It's going to be a big game. It's on TV, cable TV here in DC, or local TV here in DC. Would you mind doing us a game preview? And I was like, yeah, why not? I'm not doing much of nothing. I'll do a preview. But I quickly, as in sales, always ask for the business, right? So I quickly say, hey, did they pick the commentators for the game yet? He's like, oh, you know what? I don't know. Let me call the producer and find out. Within 5 minutes, he called me back. He's like, no, he said they didn't. And I told him, you got to get this guy Emory on. He knows the women's tackle football game in and out. He does these great videos. So the producer called me within 20 minutes of that conversation. And it's like, could you make it down to DC? I was like, absolutely. So I get down to DC, and this was, a game that's going to be on, local TV. And so I'm killing. I'm excited. This was my Super Bowl, right? I knew the women's names back and forth. I knew some of their history. Was able to reference previous games, breaking down the games as if we were watching, Florida State and Florida. And so, and the guy I worked with, the play-by-play guy, was cool because that was my first time on TV. And so he was, kind of giving me coaching tips as we were going along on, transitions. And when we're in commercial break, like, here's what we should do, and da-da-da-da. And he was with SiriusXM. So afterwards, the producer was like, man, I was getting live, text messages and emails from people saying this broadcast is great. And the color guy was great. And so he was like, are you available next weekend? We just signed this deal with these high school All-American games up in Towson, Maryland. I was like, yeah, I mean, cool. Let me check my schedule. Really, I had nothing on the schedule. Let me check my schedule, see if I could do it. And so he says intense. It's 3 games in one day. I'm like, that's fine. Like, I literally have nothing to do. So let's go. So next weekend, I get down to Towson. We do the 3 high school All-American games. Start at 9. We wrapped up at about 4. I was excited. Now we're talking something more. I'm more comfortable with in terms of the references. And so he was like, listen, we just got a deal last night with Georgetown football, the Hoyas. He said, would you be interested in doing college games? So I'm like, absolutely. So once the first thing happened, within 3 weeks, I went from doing women's college football games to high school All-American games to now I'm doing college football games. And so he was like, "What games would you want?" I was like, "I could do all of them if you need me to." He's like, "All right, we got all home games and you're good to go." So that season, I think that was a 2015 season, I was doing all Georgetown home games, and it was fantastic. And again, that was my initial start in it. And they reached out to me with Synthesis Productions. They reached out to me to do that women's tackle football game. But then it goes back to, man, had I not been doing those women tackle football YouTube videos from '09 to 2014, that opportunity in 2014 wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
And
this is so important for people to pick up, because it's not the content that you're doing today that's going to matter. Oftentimes, it's the content that you did 3 years ago. And if you don't mind, I want to use this as a coaching moment, because
sure,
it's super important. So I went, and I'll share a story too. I went from having a very successful toxicology laboratory, and in April 2017, kind of got forced to sell it. Business divorce, guys I played high school football with, we no longer talk. Really, the tragedy of that situation was we made a ton of money, but we lost our business relationship. So we're like that cliche of friends who no longer even talk. So I took 2 years and just rediscovered like myself, really went introspective, did a lot of emotional work, a lot of physical work. I was sharing with you earlier, this is when I go from 260 pounds with back surgery to completing a half Ironman, and spend every waking minute with my daughter, every waking minute with my wife. We travel, like we get back to, this is what human existence is supposed to be like. And I'm posting. I mean, I'm doing coaching. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm actually, doing that because I want to help men. And I took a job as a national director of sales for an infectious disease lab, and they were really struggling whenever I came on, but they were anti-social media. Like, they wouldn't let us post on LinkedIn. They would not let us share the stuff that we were doing. They were afraid that somebody was going to come and actually get them because of what they were posting online. They couldn't control it. They didn't want you to do it. And I had done a podcast. I'd helped the Navy SEALs out. I'd shared my story about addiction. I was very open about my life. And that was actually not cool for them. They didn't want to blend what I was doing and what that message was. So I put it down, and I missed 2 years of amazing growth, all of COVID. Like, we went from 3 sales reps to 100 sales and service reps. I hired, recruited, trained all of them. We went from 6,000 samples a month to 650,000 samples a month. I could have been documenting the entire fucking thing. I missed it all. And I missed it all because of someone else's fear. What I could have did was, I could have still posted on my personal Insta. I could have still posted on my personal Facebook page, and I could have still posted on my personal LinkedIn page. And I could have did posts that were neutral about the time, because I don't do political stuff. I don't, that's not my thing. My thing is about, like, what's going on in the moment. How can you learn from it? I should have leaned in and kept doing it, because I missed an opportunity to grow an audience, but more importantly, I missed an opportunity for someone in 3 years to look back at what I did during COVID and see it, so I can get that opportunity that you got. So there's one lesson in this particular part of this podcast, is the way that you can create independence in your book of business as a sales rep, and also the way that you can actually continue to mount evidence that you're a real person, that you are a content expert, and that you can do the next job, is through social proof on social media. It's digital diagnostics. It's being able to put that out there so people want to give you an opportunity because they trust that you're going to do a good job. If Emory doesn't do it, they're not going to take a risk. He was a safe bet because he had already did, at that time, 5,000 of the 10,000 reps required for him to get where he's at right now.
Yeah, because you think about it, they probably, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'm prepared for this. And in their mind, they're like, oh, he's prepared for this. But to the person watching, like, oh, you got lucky. And it's like, no. Yes, luck is involved, but you have to be good or talented, or at least capable of being in that position. And that has kind of been the story because of all the videos I did prior. When people ask, when we first started Football Game Plan, it was 4 of us, and it was like we should do the NFL draft and NFL. And I was like, no, man, we got to do all football because that's the difference. That's going to be our niche. We cover everything. We're Football Game Plan. And so we were doing, so everybody was like, well, I'm going to just do the NFL and NFL draft. I was like, all right, well, then I'll handle the rest of the doggone site. I'm going to do the college football from D1 all the way down to JUCO. I'm going to do women's tackle football. At the time, I'm going to do NFL Europe. I'm going to do all of these different things because that's going to help make Football Game Plan grow faster. No one is doing everything. And so fast forward back to 2000, now I'm doing these college games. And so now I want to take my game to the next level. I want to then go into, covering games live as a analyst and as a scout, right? So I'm reaching out to the NFL. I'm reaching out to these NFL teams and I'm saying, listen, let me come in, let me apply for credentials. And so I kept getting no's. I got like 2-3 years worth of no's, not even to come and cover mini camp or OTAs. I was offering to cover stuff that nobody else wanted to cover, like the training camp practice in a dead heat of the sun. And finally, I get an opportunity. I reach out to I was trying to do Jets and Giants because it's right here local. So I reach out to the Eagles, and the Eagles guy got back to me. He's like, sure, what game would you like to come down and cover? I was like, whoa. I was like, thank you. And by this time we had wrote 3 books, 3 football books. So I was like, I'm gonna give him a Football Game Plan mug, these 3 books as a thank you. So I get down to Philly, and it's in the press box. I'm excited. First time actually covering a live NFL game. And I go to him. I was like, hey, man, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Here's something for thanks. He's like, oh, man, listen, you don't have to do that. He said, I already knew who you was when you emailed me. I was like, what you mean? He's like, he said, I played lacrosse at Tufts University, and I used to watch your D3 football breakdowns on YouTube. I'm thinking in my head, wow. Stuff that you used to do, you never know how it impacts you or how it impacts someone else. Yeah. And it's funny because I've been trying to get into the league for so long and never knowing how I was going to break that wall down. And lo and behold, it was something that I did that no one wanted to do, but I was doing it because it was important to the site. And I enjoyed doing it, just talking football. And here I breaking down a D3 game.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to interrupt you. How many times were you told whenever you were going to go and play the Cajuns D1 that you should play D2 or D3?
I would say twice.
I was going to say every time, because that was my answer. Like every single time I was like, no, I want to play D1 ball. Like I was invited to walk on to LSU, and I was offered a scholarship for the Cajuns. We had a coaching change right at the end. And I was either going to go to Southern Miss or I was going to come to the Cajuns, but it wasn't to play linebacker. I was recruited as a linebacker. It was actually to be more like a strong safety, because my senior year in high school, I was 5'11", 175 pounds. I was a starting middle linebacker, but I was a leaper. I was a triple jumper, a hurdler. I was more like a decathlete. In fact, I almost came to the Cajuns as a decathlete. And you saw me in college. I was no longer 5'11", 185 pounds.
No. He was a Terminator.
I was a big dude. Man, I miss that guy sometimes. I miss his traps. But but it was like, what's cool about your story is D3 got you to the league. But you had to go, you went D1 to learn what you needed to learn. Like it's not the easy path, man. I'm telling you, the easy path is not the path. Oftentimes it is going to get you the reward that you need. Like you took a freaking hard road to get where you are. I'm so proud of you, man. You created your own luck. That's what I just wrote down. I'm going to title this episode, Create Your Luck.
You have to, because I tell people now in a more direct quote type manner, like I'll take the scenic route. It'll just make the destination, when I get there, the story a lot better, So I love taking the scenic route, because the story is going to be dope by the time I get to where I need to be. And it was interesting because you had to go to women's tackle football to get on TV. You had to go to D3 to cover the NFL, to get to the NFL, like you mentioned. And it was so bizarre. But then here's the kicker. And this is something that sometimes you got to do things that you don't want to do in order to get where you want to be, or sometimes you're going to get humbled, you're going to get booed, you're going to get shamed. And I remember being so proud of the YouTube channel in '09. So I'm telling everybody, oh, we got a show. And the first thing people say, oh, what station? And like, it's on YouTube. Oh, it's on YouTube. Then we started podcasting in 2011 when nobody was doing it. And we was telling people, hey, we got a radio show that you could live call in every Saturday morning from 9 to 11. And they were like, oh, what station? Like, no, from 11 to 1. What station? It was like, it's on Blog Talk Radio. It was like, oh, it's an internet radio. Fast forward to now, YouTube and podcasts are the thing. So those same people are trying to figure out how to do this when now you, who started when it was starting, are the expert. So YouTube and podcasting like the back of your hand, and you were doing it, you were out in front early when no one was doing it. And that kind of helped you be ready for the change in media. So even though back then you thought linear TV was how it was supposed to go, now everything is streamed, everything is online. And I remember telling somebody, because I was angry because I kept getting the same response, oh, it's on YouTube. Like, bro, look around. We're standing in line in the mall. Where's the TV? You don't have one. Pull out your phone. There's YouTube.
Right.
Yeah, so you can watch me right now more so that you can watch somebody on TV. And then this was the big part of how far I knew I came. I was at the NFL Combine. This was in 2018. And I'm talking with a coaching friend of mine, and I see somebody walking, toward us. And I'm thinking like, well, we standing in the way, the exit behind us, maybe we got to move. And it's a big dude keep walking toward. I'm thinking like, this dude clearly making a beeline toward us. So he stops and was like, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. He said, you're the czar of the playbook. I was like, what? I was like, yeah, that's me. That's this. He's like, man, I grew up watching you on YouTube. I watched all your videos in middle school. I'm like, bro, you're at the combine. You're Jamil Demby.
Wow.
You're about to be drafted. And he's like, yeah, but I remember watching your videos all the time. I'm thinking like, damn, I've really been doing this for someone like him who's probably like 21, 22. I've been doing it since he was 14.
Yeah. You're the Gary Vaynerchuk of freaking football broadcasting, man. Content.
You put it out there and you never know what sticks. And every case in point, and this is another story of how stuff you do now probably won't impact a resident until 4 or 5 years later. Our interviewing coaches was something that I didn't want to do, because I used to tell my girlfriends like, I know coaches are busy. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to. She was like, nah, try it out. You got some connections, blah, blah, blah. So I reached out to a couple coaches, started getting some interviews, and, I'm doing a video interview. So I interviewed this one coach, and it's Joe Moorhead, right? He was the head coach at Fordham. Mm-hmm. And so I interviewed him. We go through the whole process. He was cool. Then afterwards I said, coaches, it's up to you. We can do a whiteboard segment. I usually ask coaches before if they want to do it. He's like, yeah, let's do it. But why not? So we on a whiteboard drawing up plays. He's taking me through his offense, and he was like, you want to do a film thing where we can show it on film what I just drew up? I was like, hey, that's up to you. Like, he was like, yeah, let's do it. You're here. Let's knock it out. So we did like 3 hours of filming, right? And broke it up to like, condensed, 3 separate 10-minute videos, right? So videos are doing crazy. And Coach Moorhead, me and him still tight to this day. He'll text me and is like, how's my video doing, right? So I remember I was doing, I did some scouting. I was at this Pitt Miami game on a Friday night, and then I was going to have to drive to Baltimore on Saturday to broadcast this Morgan State game. So as I'm driving from Pittsburgh to Baltimore, someone tweeted at me, was like, hey, what do you think about Moorhead as the Penn State offensive coordinator? It's like, man, I'm not going to comment on this guy's job. He's the head coach at Fordham. I get to Baltimore and I read the tweet deeper. Oh, he took the job at Penn State, and now people at Penn State, beat writers, people that
are looking at your
video shot through the roof. And because no one knew who Joe Moorhead was, but here's this whole 30-minute video piece on Joe Moorhead and Joe Moorhead's offense. It was going bananas. But again, we did that video 2.5 years prior to him taking that job. And 2.5 years later, people now think, oh, if I interview with Football Gameplan, like I'm probably gonna, because guys interviewing. I was interviewing at D3 schools, NAIA schools, Canadian schools are now getting jobs at the Power 5, and people think, well, damn, if Emory comes interview us, that's the place we need to go interview. It's like the Breakfast Club. We need to go there and interview with him. And it just it blew my mind how that just stuff you were doing then blows up now, and it kind of helps build your brand. And you don't think of it while you're in it. You think you're just doing a good job, just interviewing this coach, and you're getting content. But man, content sticks nowadays. And no matter when somebody sees it, when they see it, you better make sure it's good, and it definitely resonates.
So let's do a little trivia real quick. All right. And maybe a little fast question. So when I say television, which is, say old media, when I say television, what do you think of?
John Madden, Pat Summerall.
All right. Okay. Let me make it clear. Connected to modern media. So old media, television. What's modern media?
YouTube.
And then I'm going to tell you my John Madden story. All right. So YouTube. When I say radio, what do you hear?
Oh, podcast.
Right. When I say newspaper, what do you hear?
Twitter.
When I say magazines, what do you hear?
Whole blog.
Right? People don't get it. And one of the problems that we have in lab, dude, I cannot tell you how many gold nuggets you just dropped. I'm taking notes over here that are just lessons and coaching lessons. Like I'm going to ask you to be on the advisory board for the Core Academy, just to come in and teach the students the importance of modern marketing techniques from like real first person experience. Because the people who are in the decision-making zone right now that work for laboratories, and just give you like some facts. So the laboratory budget in America is probably about 3 to 4% of, like, say, Medicare, the actual whole budget. But 80 to 85% of all clinical decisions are made off of a diagnostic test. So think about the importance of how much it costs versus how it frames the decision. But because we have these really great labs, we have good labs, laboratory developed tests, and we have technology, and we have processes and systems that can actually help heal patients, right? But we don't have modern marketing techniques to be able to broadcast the message. We're stuck. We cannot advance innovation because people will not adopt a new way of doing business. They cold call, they knock. Imagine if every time you had to do you got a new gig or a new job, you had to drive to the stadium, knock on the door of the school's president, ask to book a lunch, so that way you can pitch your services. Like, that is literally what we do now. We say that we're in medical and it's like an elite prestigious job, but we're door-to-door salesmen. They don't, and I think door-to-door is also very important, necessary job. But if you think about door-to-door alarm sales, that's what sales reps do. They just go from doctor's office to doctor's office, peddling and pitching to try to get through the gatekeeper to have a lunch. So that way they can have that lunch to pitch their ideas. Hopefully they're going to get somebody to sign some paperwork that is going to allow them to be able to do training in an in-service for people to tell them, yes, it's a yes or no, because they're not truly bought into the process because they don't have evidence and they haven't said yes to them 100 times before. Modern marketing, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. These are now hunting strategies that are available to sales reps and to laboratories, so that way they can market their message. I always say you have a moral obligation to learn this shit. If you want to save lives, you have to figure out a way to market the message. You have to convert mindsets. You have to go from somebody who is interested, they have to desire what you're selling, and then fucking demand it. They have to demand it, because otherwise they're not bought in and the patients suffer. So there's a lot of things that you're talking about right now, man, that ends up running right in line with how we need to be marketing our messages as medical sales reps, bro. Thank you.
You gotta be efficient and quick. And football teaches you sudden change, so you get off the field and you get to the sideline, you get a break, get a water break, turnover, got to get right back out there, right? And so when you think about that in terms of business, people used to say, I used to tell people, I do a YouTube channel, you got to check me out, I think I could be successful in this. And people say, oh, send me your tape. And while they're talking to me, I done already texted them my YouTube link. And I was like, oh, you already got it. I just sent it to you. And they're like, wow. So now they're watching it real time. So in terms of a traditional sense, if that time that, I would have to prepare, get it mailed out, then to receive it, then to watch it, and then to send me feedback. That's probably a 4-week process, a month process, and I'm out of sight, out of mind.
You miss it. Missed
opportunity. Yep. And now you got to be efficient. You got to be able to have something that everybody needs. You got to give them the blue elephant, something that they know they don't need, that they know they couldn't, that now that they can't live without. And so now you're able to send them stuff that they're just like, oh yeah, this is cool. So now to tie it back to football game plan, I put out a draft guide every the last 2 years. I put out a draft guide, NFL draft guide. Now people tend to look at Kuiper as a standard, which he is. He created this whole cottage industry. But if you think about what you hear on TV, everyone's talking about the same, 50 prospects. But we know that the NFL draft is, 250 something players, and half the league is comprised of guys that are not on that were not drafted. So I was like, all right, cool. So I put out my draft guide last year, had over 700 players, and this is a sample of what it is. It's a big, thick book, all scouting reports, right? So now, and I saw this happen in 2014 when I was doing my draft videos. If someone gets drafted and and I specialize in smaller school prospects, that's why the book is so thick. So someone gets drafted from, let's say, McNeese State, and all the beat writers of the team are like, well, who the hell is this guy from McNeese State? They got to go to Football Game Plan to get a scouting report. And now you become the source. And so now that's how you grow the business. So now people know I can go here to get at least that. But while they're there, they see everything else that you offer. And that's how you get people staying.
And then, and so what you've basically done is you've hacked the path. So there is a path and a natural flow. You become something that is necessary. And you also become something that is now also convenient. And now you become something that they are now demanding. And because you offer something that they need, but you're not giving to them, they're not like needy from a place of desperation. You're not selling salvation. You're giving them a quality product at a time that they need it. And then that to me is like, do they say thank you?
They say thank you by keep bringing me back on their radio shows, and now your brand grows, your personal brand grows. So people, let's say CBS sees like, well, why are we keep bringing on this dude that you guys say give us all the different information, and he's on 6 of our shows? How about we just bring him on CBS? And so boom, you've created multiple pathways for success where everyone is focusing on the big picture. Everybody's focusing on the NFL, but they're missing, the small school guys, the coaches. They're missing, the players that come in from Canada. There's so much that they're missing, but you have jumped in and filled those voids that now you become the source for women's football, CFL, international prospects, small school prospects, under the radar coaching candidates. You've become the source. You've created that void, and now you've just strengthened your tie. So when you say something, people will now listen.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're framing yourself as an expert, which is one of the things that not only are you framing yourself as an expert, but you're also making yourself very current, very relevant, very now, because the information is happening right now. And then also pull that book up again.
There we go.
That is not a little book. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into that book. How do you pull it together? What's your production schedule for something like that?
3 weeks. As I'm watching, and this is why technology is so great. While I'm watching film on a prospect and I'm grading his film, I'm inputting it in the draft guide. So it's 1-to-1. Watch, grade. So every body I watch, I grade, and then you just move on. You simplify your process. It's just like sales. Okay, I'm gonna call everybody in this zip code today. So for me, I'm grading all quarterbacks. So that way my eye is trained on quarterbacks. So once I'm done with 50 quarterbacks, get those grades out, then you move on to the next position. So because as you get to quarterback 13, your eye is trained to pick up even more so what you're looking for quicker. So you get done quicker instead of jumping around. So let's say if you're cold calling, or you say, I'm gonna go visit every office in Orleans Parish or Tangible Hope Parish. I'm gonna go visit those first, work that business first, and move on to the next. That way you kind of can simplify, attack, you can kind of corner that market before you move on. Because if you try to go everywhere else and try to do different things, you'll never get done what you're trying to accomplish. So it's about working smarter and not harder.
Love it.
And you'll be able to accomplish so much stuff.
Love it. Love it. Love it. One of the things we're doing right now is we're taking sales reps, we're putting them through the academy. And as they're actually, so there's an email, a 30-day email sequence challenge, because, you know, you have clients or people that like you on LinkedIn, and they like you on Facebook, and they like you on Instagram, but that is not a list that I own. That is a list that I control, but it's impacted by the algorithms that Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram allow. So one of the things I try to do is get them to come from those social media platforms onto my actual email list, because that is now a list that I actually own. And so one of the things we do in the writing challenge is we get the sales reps to start, you know, crafting their message, have their capture permission sequence, be able to have the conversion of the mindset, which could be, you know, 8, 9, 10, 14 different touches, to be able to then get them to be compelled to action, to fill out an application or book time. So that way we can close their commitment and then have a competent, confident client. That's the purpose of the seduction sequence and the collision-based sales process. In that writing, though, one of the things I hated about school was, like, I do all this homework and it was for nothing but the test. It's like, how can I make this actionable? So we have them do their writing. So when they're doing their client avatar and their target market assessments, they're actually writing, doing the homework that they're then going to apply when they get plugged into the CRM. When they're writing their message sequence and they're putting together their educational emails, framing themselves as an expert, they're then taking that now and it's going to be plugged into their email sequence for new clients. When somebody says no, that's cool. It's awesome. We got to know. Now here's our overcome objection sequence. Here's our purge sequence. So that way they can continue to be warmed up. So we can then go do an actual door knock, and they've heard from us. They've seen us. All of the homework, work smarter, not harder. All of the homework comes into action once they have some psychological shifts, because psychologically, like, you try to get somebody all of a sudden to stare into a camera and be able to maintain eye contact and not be nervous. If you can't do this, you're going to struggle also in person. Mm-hmm. I tell people all, like, you practice on the camera because the camera's your friend. So everything, and we review their game tape. Like, I had no idea. This was me at a boardroom table. I was like, fuck, that's my linebacker face. If I put that helmet on right now, I'd be like this, it's like, cause that's my, well, when I get serious, all of a sudden my face goes down like this. How do you want to do? You want to do business with somebody who's looking at you like this? Mm-mm. It's an angry face. So you start picking these things up, and it's the tape, it's the review, and it's the working smarter. Love it, man.
Everything has to be functional. So no matter what task that you're doing, it has a purpose. Make sure it has a purpose. So I was like, all right, I want to get on TV. I want to be, Gus Johnson, or I want to be someone that's breaking down games. And you think of that in terms of starting a YouTube channel. Well, I'm not just going to do a YouTube channel, just sit around, just talking, off the cuff about sports. Let me, structure it to where I'm doing a football show, albeit mine, albeit small, albeit whatever. But these are the functional reps. So now, because we started out with suits on, at a desk with helmets, with props and everything like that in my first videos. So my transition from that to in studio was seamless, because I did 5 years of that, because I structured it that way. It was no different. There was no, big change that was needed to go from, hey man, we need you to come in studio. All right, cool. I got suits. I'm used to sitting at a desk. I'm talking in front of
I've been preparing while nobody was watching for 5 years for the moment when I'd have my opportunity. I love it.
So people are always surprised at how easy I make things look when they're like, dude, prime example, this is my first time in studio with CBS Sports during the pandemic, or during the football season. It was like, the producer was saying, like, wow, you read the prompter so well. You were moving from camera 1 to camera 3 so well. And I'm thinking, like, bro, I've been doing this since.
This is luxury.
Exactly. You was in high school when I was doing this.
Yeah. I got to switch. I have camera 1, camera 2, and I got a switchboard right here. So I got to switch for myself, So when I'm doing my videos, I'm literally I make sure that my index finger is the left camera and my middle finger is the right camera. So that way I can switch, because live editing after the fact is very expensive. So you
Right.
want to make sure whenever it's coming in, it can't. And you need to switch cameras because you're helping people maintain attention. And so if you want to be intentional about your message, you want people to, I'm trying to gather and capture their attention. And I have to keep them entertained. They have to laugh because if they're laughing, they're learning. And so you really start to, people, man, when you get into it and you start doing the reps, these are the things that you realize if you're measuring your results. Wow, that impacted my results positively. That impacted my results negatively. But what's been really cool about your story is how the work that you did consistently, an hour in the morning, an hour at night, an hour in the morning, an hour at night, and then the commitment that you made to go all in and do it full time, then opened up this space where all of a sudden the domino fell and you just took off, which is super awesome. I got one question about a draft prospect. Hurt my heart that Trey Regis didn't go.
Right.
I really thought, I read your report on him. I think you had him as a 6th round, or you had him a little higher than that, didn't you? What'd you have him as?
Right. I had him. He was in that fifth round type area.
Yeah.
As far as like my grade was concerned.
What I mean, I'm hoping, I know the Raiders got a stacked backfield. I'm hoping he gets a really good shot, gets some good game tape there, and he can get picked up someplace else. Cause I watched him for 4 years in a row. I rarely miss a home football game with the Cajuns. And they were those two guys, him and Eli, that were fun to watch.
Oh, Reagan's going to be all right because he got something that it's an underrated trait when people break down running backs. He has a nose for the end zone. He can score. And so when you look at that Raiders backfield, they got guys, they got wiggle, they got guys that are good receivers, but they tend to struggle down near the goal line. So he can carve out a niche as a 4-minute offense back, close out the game. We're up big, close out the game with him. He's always falling forward and short yardage goal line. He's going to find the end zone. So his role can be clearly defined. It's just about him just owning that role and not look at it in terms of right now I'm 4th string or 5th string. Nah, I'm the number 1 short yardage goal line back. And that's how you carve out a role and that's how you grow. And I think that's where people it's man, everything ties back to sales because it's so true. It's not looking at, I always tell people this, and this is something that I learned early. All right. And this was cool to me. It was mind blowing to me. It was like the first time you probably saw fire. So I was like, what do you see? And I do this when I was speaking in classes. What do you see, Blake?
I see a black dot on a piece of paper.
Everybody sees a dot and missed the entire sheet of paper. Yeah. That's the opportunity. And that's what I always tell people. Like, if you focus on the big picture, it can get overwhelming. So, all right, yeah, you may be 5th on this depth chart, but when they need someone to pick up a first down, 1 yard, or get this goal-to-goal situation or punch it into the red zone, who are they calling? They're calling you. So you're the starting. You got to think and change your perspective, and it opens up everything, man. And that's what I think Vegas can do with the Raiders.
I don't ever remember a rep, or I should say very few reps, but I don't ever remember a rep that he fell backwards. I don't really remember him losing yards. I mean, he had games where he was like 6-7 yards a carry, and this guy it's like he's dragging people, but he was always, like you were saying, is always able to wiggle and move and be able to go ahead and fall forward. And yeah, he did find the goal line a lot.
Never take a loss. You never lose taking a profit, as they say.
Yeah. I'm also excited about Elijah getting into with the pickup of speed that he has now, getting more into like a slot type of position. I think his hands are amazing. And I think with his added speed, having a running back in the slot is something that, yeah, man, he's got I'm excited about it. I'm excited about both.
He landed in the right spot too, boy. Like, he may end up seeing 50-50 carries with their starter because that's how versatile and good he is. He just got to change that number, man. He's wearing 49, I heard.
Oh, really? 49 of the 49ers.
It's hard to give somebody the ball wearing 49. It's hard.
Yeah, we'll see, man. Look, I appreciate you. I wanted to ask you some football questions at the end because I wanted people to be able to see how you are when your lights turn on. As much as I know about football, I don't feel comfortable talking about it because I don't have the reps. I feel comfortable talking about sales and diagnostic lab products. It's great to be able to see you actually in your element and talking a little bit about it and giving some great advice and manifesting the destiny of those two running backs who did so much for us in our hometown.
Absolutely, man. It's great to see these guys grow and to see that program grow. I am so proud and beaming of what University of Louisiana football has become, man. I love it.
My wife and I were blessed enough to give them a gift this year. We're going to name a part of the parking lot after us. So when the new stadium gets built, yeah, we're going to have the Bork lot, which is like, I want my name on something, you know. It's like, they're like, oh, you want it to be in the coach's locker room? I was like, who the hell's going to see that? I want my name. I want my name on, like, what's the spot? What's the highest traffic street? Put my name there, you know? You know, I think, how much does the stadium cost? And they told me, I was like, nah, I'll take the parking lot. I'll take the RV parking lot. But I'm having dinner tonight with Raging Cajun Athletic Foundation. We're discussing right now the leadership program that they have for athletes after sports. I went back to them and said, look, I not only want to give some cash, but I want to give some experience and knowledge, because I had a drop off. Like I really did have a drop off. I was the quintessential, like I turned to drugs and alcohol after football and business, because I was trying to replace that family. Like I loved the team, man. I was a weight room guy. I was a team guy. I was a rah-rah guy. Like I loved every moment of football. And when that was gone, I didn't have a clear plan. Like I didn't even graduate. I came back. Like I left with 6 hours left to graduate, and then went out into business. I made my first $1 million when I was 23. I spent $1.3 million when I was 24. And at 25, I was bankrupt. So like I then went back to school at 25. I finished my degree, got a job as a banker, married my wife, and then like kind of hit the reset on my life. So I went and I talked to Hans, and I was like, man, I really want to figure out how I can help mentor these athletes who are going to be leaving. And they know this is their last day in sports. And now they got to go get a job with their degree, making $40,000 a year. They got to go now and be in a boardroom where they've been on this like course to dominate everything in their path. And now they have to gently tiptoe around egos of people who aren't on their level. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. And so just to be able to have those conversations and let them look, man, this is what you should expect, but also like, this is what your resume needs to look like. This is how you interview. This is how you impress. This is how you get promoted. This is okay. Like this team, like if you weren't good, remember they won't start you. Like that's business. If you're not producing, they're going to fire you. And you need to be switching jobs 10 times in the first 5 years. Like it's okay to get promoted and to accept more money. Like being able to just prep them and to teach them how to sell, because I think athletes do great at sales. And so I'm working on building an academy with them right now.
No, that is huge, man. Especially getting them then, because you know how the transition is always difficult when the lights come, turn off, and preparing them now for what they're going to see in business wise, and how to take, sometimes you got to scale back the student athlete part of you, because everybody takes competition well in business. Like we out there competing, but to everybody else that's they're like, oh my God, competition. It's like, and we're like, let's go. So sometimes you got to teach them how to know when and where to be aggressive in the field.
Emory, the reason why I'm built the academy and why I'm so passionate about it is because going back to an HR corporate type of environment and running a sales team with being completely authentic. Like you've heard a couple of times I drop F-bombs. Like I don't really have a filter. I am who I am. I don't want to trigger anybody with it, but at the end of the day, like the best way for me to be myself is to be myself, and I can't make the pretend version of me better. Like the guy who I'm pretending to be in sales meetings, that guy can't get any better. I have to work on the real me in order to be able to make the real me better. Oftentimes we have to take on this fake version of ourselves, and we have to be fake polite and fake nice. And we don't get a place for us to just be ourselves, like to be that dog, like to be that animal, that freaking Terminator, that guy who wants to lift weights and wants to sweat and holler and celebrate his success and be surrounded by people who want the same damn thing. You can't get that in corporate America because it's looked down on. You have so many people that get intimidated by that. So I'm creating a place where folks can come and learn how to be their authentic selves and get better and make more money, make more commission, but also date their wives, love their daughters and their sons, pay off all their debt, raise their credit scores. Like to me, it's everything's linked to wake up in the morning, work out, meditate, and be the best version of yourself you possibly can be. You can then take that power and certainty into every single meeting. And then that spreads. That spreads to their clients, that spreads to their coworkers. And if you're calling on doctors, it spreads to their patients. And so it's the way that I want to make a dent in the universe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why movies are only last about 2 hours, because you can't pretend for anything longer than that, man. You can't act for anything longer than that. I've never been good at pretending, so like, I'm gonna be me.
That'd be me. Well, you're doing a good job being you, man. And I follow you. I like you. I love you, man. I honor you. Thank you for sharing space with me. You did an amazing job dropping knowledge for the listeners. And I am building this audience. I'm putting this one early in the sequence because everybody wants to try you out. So learn from that. You have a good podcast and you're about to launch one. You want a good podcast to be one of the first or second ones that people hear. So that way they keep listening. So if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to follow Emory, I'm going to give you an opportunity to be able to go ahead right now and say, where can they follow you? Where can they like you? Where can they find you?
Well, they can follow me on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Football Gameplan. And, just follow along with the journey. It's ever changing. Every week, every day is something new. I'm still growing in this field, so you can grow with me at those outlets. Blake, I appreciate you having me on the show, and I love you too, bro, man. It's good to see you looking clean, sharp. You still look like George Clooney to me, and you still do outstanding stuff, man. I'm proud of you, bro.
All right, my man. Well, look, you be good. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch up with you again soon. You've been listening to Lab Results with Blake, and I'm your host, Blake Bork, with a closing message. Our whole target with this podcast is to positively impact the lives of 10,000 sales reps. And the best way we know how to do that is going to be by looking at the share button. The reason why is that's basically you telling us that we've done a good job impacting your life positively. And so you're now giving permission to share that message to your crew. So smash the share button. Let us know that we're doing a good job. Give us a like. That's great too. Subscribe. Absolutely. But the best thing that we can say is by sharing, greatness is contagious. And none of us woke up this morning to be average. We all woke up to be great. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.